So I'm allowing the Tesla battery to drain down to nearly 0% because I want to try an experiment. I've been giving some thought recently to what might it be like if you live in a high-rise apartment or a home where you don't have a garage with electricity, and so charging your electric vehicle overnight or using your solar panels is just not a practical option. Apparently 60% or more of us in Australia do have off-street parking, and we do have the ability to charge our cars at home, so we sort of take it for granted. But I just thought, well, what would it be like if I lived in a high-rise apartment and didn't have access to that? So I'm going to run this experiment for about 30 days, and the idea really is to just see what is it like to operate my Tesla Model Y without charging at home. And rather than try and make it easy by just going to a supercharger every time, what I'm intending to do is use the public available chargers in my neighborhood. So these are a lot slower than your Tesla supercharger. And what I want to do is just work out what does it cost me in terms of time, inconvenience, and actual dollar costs for charging using the public network rather than charging at home. So come along, it'll be an interesting experiment. So I'm not tempted to cheat. I'm going to actually remove my charger from home. I use a simple 10 amp 3-pin single phase trickle charger, and I do about 100 kilometers a day on the AGL EV Night Saver plan. The closest medium speed public charger by EVX is about 500 meters from where I live. I'm using the Tesla enhanced auto parking feature to parallel park. I think I'll be using this charger quite a bit. The process for charging at EVX is very similar to other charging station apps. You scan the code, enter your payment method, press start, and away you go. With EVX, they're charging 50 cents per kilowatt hour. On this particular occasion, it's going to take nearly 4 hours to get the battery up to 100%, although I won't wait until it gets to that point. So I don't live far away, so I decided to grab myself a coffee and then just head back home for a while. So I guess this is typical of many people who don't have charging at home. You need to occupy yourself for several hours while the car's going through the charging process. In my case, I just popped home for a little while, but you may otherwise be at the shopping mall, or you might be doing some other activities. But I returned back after 3 hours and the car was up to about 91%, and that little exercise had cost just over $15. So let's make a note of that for our spreadsheet. So a few days later, I thought I would try as part of the experiment to see how much of a charge you got if you only stayed for a short period of time. It may sound a little pointless, but I thought, well, if you just occupied yourself by going to get yourself a coffee, then what sort of a level of charge would you put on with one of these medium speed public chargers? Of course, with a Tesla supercharger, 20 or 30 minutes could basically fill your battery to nearly 100%. But on one of these slower chargers, let's have a look at just exactly what you do get after 20 minutes. So you get just under 4.5 kilowatt hours. For a Tesla Model Y standard range, that's about 33 kilometers you've added in 20 minutes. So it's pretty obvious that sitting around and just having a cup of coffee is not going to be sufficient to charge your vehicle. I thought I'd try a new strategy and treat myself to dinner out at Headlands in Austinmere. So I got myself up to Eddie's and got the car charging, went and grabbed myself some dinner. I stayed long enough at Headlands to put on over 23 kilowatt hours of battery, which on the Tesla Model Y is approaching about 170 kilometres. Total cost came to $11.71. I also got to see what some BYD owners have to go through when charging their cars, because the power connector is on the opposite side to the Tesla. Of course, your car might need a charge at a time that is not necessarily convenient to you. In one particular case, I charged the car starting at 5:30 p.m. at night, and it was on the charger for several hours. I went and picked it up at about 9:30 at night. Now, you can appreciate in some neighbourhoods this is not necessarily the best time of night to be out, and I can imagine some people feeling quite uncomfortable. Imagine also if it was raining. Anyway, the overall cost came to $16.72. There is the opportunity for those who don't have charging facilities at home to also get charging at their local mall. In our case, where we live, they have rather low speed chargers in the mall, but they are actually free to use. You do need to pay $3.50 for your parking, but if you're going to be at the mall for 2 or 3 hours, you can put on up to maybe 100 kilometres of range. So the remainder of the 30 days was basically a rinse and repeat of this process, going from one of the public chargers to another as required, to add about 50 to 100 kilometres a day on average. This is an absolute beast of a cable. Trying to wrap it up again. Deary me. I'll come up with a better system. So I've kept a note of all of the fees and charges and the amount of time I've spent charging up the car. So let's have a look at the results. I know historically I travel a little further than the average. I do 17,000 kilometres per year. In the 30 days that I took for this trial, it cost $117 for the multiple charging stops, which are about 10 in total. The elapsed time to charge worked out at about 22 hours that I had to occupy myself with other activities. I do an average of 17,000 kilometres per year, and if I take these numbers and multiply them out by 12, I'm looking at an annual cost of over $1,400 and 264 hours of time that I need to set aside for charging. I know you can do the math, but that's more than 10 days per year set aside just for charging your vehicle. So if you're not in a position where you have charging at home, I suppose it depends somewhat on what you value most, time or the money. Really, the best solution is to find the fastest charger you can, because you are paying for the convenience of that high-speed charging. The solution longer term, of course, is to have as many charging stations available to the public as possible, and these should be as fast as possible and as low cost as possible. The New South Wales government have said that they will be installing 30,000 public chargers over time, and this can't happen soon enough. Hey, thanks very much for watching, and please subscribe. Cheers. G'day and welcome to Steve's Tesla. This is my channel dedicated to electric vehicles and renewable energy. Subscribe now and let's drive.